What makes you excited about Bitcoin in this cycle? What have you seen in the bull market this cycle?
Look, I look at it as kind of two prongs. There's kind of the engineering and protocol development and things going on with layers. So there's exciting explosion of advancements on Lightning, and then I'm pretty close to the Arc project and helping out Tiero and Arc Labs a little bit, and really bullish on what that does, both on its own, but then also enhancing Lightning. So that's pretty cool. And then obviously on the number go up side of things, I mean, this is the cycle of the corporates. I think that's where all the noise is. And, we're shooting now on Pizza Day. Isn't it Pizza Day? May 22nd? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Pizza Day today.
And yesterday, yesterday over in Japan, there was a short squeeze on MetaPlanet that just looked insane. I mean, it was like GameStop level hilarity over there. With them gapping up yesterday, and then there's the Tether SPAC with Jack Mallers, that's going to plow a bunch of money in through Cantor and SoftBank and do kind of a MicroStrategy clone, and then there's the David Bailey Bitcoin Magazine one, Nakamoto with Jihan and Balaji and all those guys trying to buy a bunch of Bitcoin. So it'll be interesting to see these play out, and there's probably another 10 in the works right now of just hedge funds pooling together a couple $1 billion and looking for somebody to be the operator and the promoter. And so I don't think this theme is played out at all. I think it will be the primary factor leading to a larger rise in price in the near term, and also that eventual cycle high being sooner. So that's my kind of calculus since the last couple of weeks of a lot more announcements and a lot more of these Bitcoin accumulation public vehicles starting, is that we'll be going higher and it will be sooner, which also means that a crash will come sooner and it will be worse.
Interesting. It's also interesting. It's like if you look at Google Trends and all those things, it seems like institutional adoption is the one that drives everything right now, and retail is kind of sleeping on it. I was also really disappointed by how nobody cares outside of Bitcoin about the 100K and what's going on in Bitcoin. I thought number go up technology is something that retail excites about, but not even this is really exciting for them.
Yeah, checking I have a block rocket, not a block clock behind me. It's really cool, but it's not in the camera right now. But yeah, we're at 111, and yeah, it does feel a lot different, this rise from 74, 73 or whatever we got down to, and then back through 100K finally and up to 110, 111. This definitely feels a lot different and a lot more real than all the attempts to take 100K before. And so, yeah, I think the bull market has begun as of yesterday. May 21st was the day the bull market began. And yeah, we'll see what happens. There's nothing but air above, and there's no price memory, and there's no natural kind of sell walls other than round numbers. You'll have a little bounce back at 120, 130, 140, 150, whatever. But I think, there aren't natural sellers when we get into these areas. And so many OGs, I think, have already dumped the portions of their stacks that they wanted to around kind of the psychological, 6 figures, having negotiated with their wives, 4 years ago or 8 years ago that they promised to peel some off and buy a house finally, or, upgrade the 1986 Datsun to something like a 2015 Camry or something like that. They peel off some coins around 100K. And I think that's what happened for 6 months. And now that selling seems to be mostly gone.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's like the milestones of 100K is also like you if you are in Bitcoin since like 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, at some point you're like, okay, maybe you only earn a little bit, but you saved a lot, and then it's like, hey, I want to peel off a little bit to maybe up my standard or something. Like it's understandable. I think it's human, even though it probably will be a bad financial decision long term, but maybe it's a good emotional decision.
Yeah, that's we have lives and we have families, and you only live once. And if you haven't visited Rome and Istanbul and Barcelona and London and Vienna in your life, like, take the trip at some point. You got to. Otherwise, what is this all for? And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get to once they've held for a long, long time. So I'm never gonna lambast anybody that holds for 10 years and appreciates through 2 cycles and goes up 2 orders of magnitude in their stack value or something like that from peeling off some coins and living life a little bit.
How do you actually look at selling Bitcoin versus, let's say, you have to like buy a new car because your old broke down, and you either have to sell Bitcoin because you're already all in, or you can borrow against it? How do you look at that topic?
I mean, if you have cash flow coming in because you have a job and you can cover interest payments and that you can pay back the fiat loan, without having to peel off Bitcoin later, or you just, you don't have to put up much of your stack for the asset-backed loan. And so then you can afford to wait it out and roll the loan, 2, 3, 4 years or however long it takes for Bitcoin's CAGR and price appreciation to make it cheaper. Then it makes sense. But there's a reason that we don't make asset-backed loans available in the Swan interface. It's because we want to be able to talk to people. That's kind of the point of Swan, is that you actually get a private client advisor that you can actually speak to about these things. We also don't do small loans, like somebody that's only looking to borrow 5K or 10K or something like that. Probably shouldn't be doing that, in my view. Like, that's probably going to get you wrecked. Most of these asset-backed loan products, it's the lower end of the scale that's getting margin called, because they wouldn't be borrowing the money unless they really, really needed it. So it's probably better to focus on top line and earnings rather than risking your stack if you don't actually have much of a stack. Back on sells, interestingly, we just added a sell button in the Swan app and website for the first time since inception. So the first 5 years of Swan was no sell button. I think we've made our point. Also, we've had so many people that bought, in the single digits, single digit thousands, and bought at 17, 18, 30, whatever it is. They're just, they've ridden it up, and I don't think that we need to force them to get in touch with client service so we can convince them not to sell anymore, which is what we've done historically. You had to call us and answer some questions before we allowed you to sell.
It's almost like the reversed, where when you try to transfer from the bank to a Bitcoin exchange, the bank is asking, like, do you really want to do that? And now it's like the reverse of, like, do you really want to go back to fiat?
Yeah, no, it's true. We have this discussion with Jorn, our German UI UX guy, and we were always laughing about how many boxes do you have to close to be able to sell? Like, are you sure? Close. Are you really sure? Yes. Like, maybe you move it around and it's really hard to click on. An impossible CAPTCHA, like you have to click on the bridges or the traffic lights, but you're always wrong. And then finally you could sell. But no, we have a sell button now. I gave up.
Without a think time. So, like, you sell button, but you have to think about your decision 10 days.
Yes, that's what we should do. Yeah, we should have like a slight delay or something. But
it's really interesting. I actually did not know that, because in Austria I couldn't even I think I couldn't even use Swan for the longest time, and since the last 6 months I just earn in Bitcoin and don't really have to buy it. But it's interesting to not have a sell button. I wasn't aware that Swan does not have a sell button. I always knew about Bitcoin only, but how, like, was it? Because it's so, if you build a Bitcoin exchange, you're like, okay, like, buy and sell, like, those are the two options. So it was from the inception of, like, hey, we don't want people to sell it.
We were never an exchange. We don't have an order book. So we've always just been an accumulation platform and a financial services firm. So it's, yes, you buy Bitcoin, and then you have retirement accounts, you have custody, you have inheritance advice, you have things that are coming later this year, like a Bitcoin rewards credit card and Bitcoin interest on dollar deposits. We have Swan Vault, the 2 of 3 multi-sig product, and just kind of on and on. Entity accounts, business stacking, corporate treasury services. So it's really about being a broad-based, Bitcoin-based wealth platform or a financial services firm, not an exchange. So the type of client that we attract, obviously with our Bitcoin only message and hold for the long term, not having a sell button was only ever weird or an issue for like less than 1% of our clients, because none of them historically ever wanted to sell. So it's really about our client base getting a little bit longer in the tooth and having gone through a couple of bull markets now, or 1.5, where you start to hear more requests for a sell button.
Yeah, it's like then you don't want to take advantage of that. But you had
We're
also
not an
those.
exchange, right? Just like, these kind of, Swan, Unchained, River, Strike, Fold, like those are not exchanges. They're basically brokers.
It's like an on and off ramp, like on ramp, basically. It's really interesting. I'm wondering, because you're so long in the Bitcoin, and you've learned a lot on Bitcoin. What is the kind of the biggest lessons you learned from Bitcoin outside of Bitcoin, really, outside of money and Namuga technology and about the cycles?
So completely outside of Bitcoin, I think because Bitcoin is so linked with energy and energy markets and energy production, I think that's probably the one area that I learned the most about, probably that I wasn't into before. Uh, I I was already very into economics, finance, investing, macro, economic history, monetary history, like all those kinds of things. I went to University of Chicago, started there 23 years ago. So I kind of been around the monetarists and the Austrians for a long time. Um, but yeah, I think getting energy pilled is something that happens to most Bitcoiners that start to pay attention and see what's true and what's not true about what we've been told about energy markets and energy production.
Yeah, the biggest thing is always like when you listen to them, you're like, when you spend less energy, it's better than you when you spend more energy. And I'm like, no, actually, is that really true? I don't think so.
It's definitely not true. Yeah, it basically comes from false narratives around population bombs from the 70s. And thinking that we needed like a smaller energy footprint, and people freaking out about peak oil. But meanwhile, we've used more oil every year for the last 50 years, and also every year for the last 50 years, we've had more proven reserves. So as we use more oil, we're finding out that we have more oil, because that's just the nature of the planet that we live on, that as technology gets better and as technology gets cheaper over time, because of going down the cost curve of production and exploration, we end up with more proven reserves as we go.
That's why it was also frustrating. I mean, now the environment FUD is almost gone. I don't hear it a lot, but it took some time, and it was like really annoying for like 1-2 years there.
It is, yeah. It's we. I'm assuming you're kind of an upper millennial, and I'm kind of like a young Gen X, and our entire lives have only been with the backdrop of climate freakout. But if you're a little bit older than us and you were born in the 60s or before, then you saw 10 years of global freezing FUD before the global warming FUD. So we were all going to freeze, and the ice caps were going to come and cover everything in the 60s and 70s, and that didn't happen. So so I think some of those folks have a little bit more perspective, because they've seen this go both ways, and it's kind of a way to start lots of nonprofits, where the people running the nonprofits profit plenty because their salaries are like $1 million, and they spend all of the donations on private jets and parties.
I'm actually Gen Z still. Like most people are. I'm still Gen Z.
Okay, well, it's the
but like just a year.
Healthy Central European facial hair always confuses me.
Yeah. Yeah, really cool. I really want to get your take on the things that kind of happened this cycle, and there's so much happening from like last year. I mean, in America, I'm kind of envy, honestly, because in America, at least, there's like Bitcoin talk on politics sides, on regulator side. In European Union, if you hear something, it's very negative, and you're lucky to hear anything about Bitcoin at all. How has the political landscape for you changed in the last coming years, and how also Trump maybe impacted things on your side?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been fascinating. and it's a story of leaning into a demographic of Bitcoiners, but also obviously all the money coming from the crypto folk trying to perform regulatory capture and get out of jail free card by backing politicians. So it's reopened that battlefield that kind of ended to some degree with the launch of the ETFs and kind of the separation of Bitcoin from crypto after the crypto collapses in 22, 23. That battlefield has kind of been reopened because, crypto did not get regulated out of existence in the United States, and it's very, very strong, and they own a bunch of representatives and a bunch of senators, and the crypto folk basically own the White House. And and Bitcoin is kind of along for the ride, and it's the only thing that all these different crypto companies can agree on. And of course, Bitcoin doesn't care because it doesn't have a management team and it doesn't have lobbyists. So it's kind of at the whim of very idiosyncratic relationships where we benefit from, a few senators that actually understand Bitcoin deeply. They still sometimes have to make compromises with blockchain, crypto, DeFi people. So that would be like a Cynthia Loomis or something like that, where she's involved in crypto things, but is really like Bitcoin only, and at least doesn't take money or do favors for the worst of the crypto actors. And then you also have, Senator Cruz, for instance, who understands Bitcoin deeply and in a very principled way doesn't touch crypto at all. And then you have a bunch of politicians that are just completely for sale, and they will say whatever they need to get the money to get a bunch of donations and then get reelected. And that's pretty much the rest of them. And then you've got the Trumps, just lining their pockets every which way that they can by taking promo money and $350 million of trading fees on Trump coin, and a big mining company just giving them 20% of the company to be associated, things like that. So it's just it's the most commercially minded administration ever, as far as the administration itself and the candidate and his family being in business and more than doubling their net worth since January, mostly through crypto, is pretty unprecedented in really all of world politics outside of tyrannies.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.